Have you ever wondered why a man can crave a woman's affection, yet crumble when faced with her independence? Why he clings to her touch, but trembles at the thought of her not needing him to breathe? This paradox lives at the center of countless love stories, breaking silently beneath the surface of relationships that once seemed destined to last. And at the heart of it lies something Carl Jung understood deeply: the unbearable weight of confronting the other's wholeness when you have yet to face your own. She loved him, yes, but she did not need him. Her presence was a river that nourished, not a desert begging for rain. She offered devotion without desperation, warmth without dependency. To a man still entangled in his unhealed wounds, such love does not feel safe. It feels like judgment. Because if she can stand on her own 2 feet, if she can breathe without him, then he is forced to see himself not as a savior, but as an equal. And equality terrifies the insecure masculine. It shatters the illusion of control that his ego clings to. This is not hatred. This is not betrayal. It is projection. Jung's timeless truth. He did not see her as she was. He saw in her a mirror reflecting all he feared in himself: weakness, inadequacy, the possibility that he might be dispensable. Her self-possession whispered to him what he had always tried to silence, that without the performance of dominance, without being needed, he did not know who he truly was. And so he recoiled. He could not handle her, not because she was too much, but because she refused to shrink. You have seen this before, haven't you? A woman who refuses to beg, a woman whose love flows freely but never grovels. She is magnetic, yet misunderstood. Men may adore her in the beginning, intoxicated by her radiant independence, but soon the very quality that drew them close becomes the poison in their veins. They begin to resent the freedom that first inflamed their desire. Why? Because her lack of need exposes their hidden dependency. It reminds them that love, when it is real, cannot be controlled. Jung would tell you that in every man lives an anima, the unconscious feminine that he both longs for and fears. If he has not reconciled with her within, he will project her onto the woman before him. He will demand she play the role his soul resists confronting. He will want her soft, submissive, clinging, because his own psyche trembles before the archetype of the self-sufficient feminine. And when she refuses to collapse into that mold, he feels betrayed, though she has betrayed nothing but his illusions. And here is where the story deepens. Love without need is the purest love, yet also the most dangerous to the insecure. She did not bind him with chains. She did not beg for his presence. She simply loved, and in that simplicity, he saw the truth, that he was free to leave at any time. Do you know how many men cannot handle that? Because freedom terrifies the one who believes love must be earned through sacrifice, control, or superiority. To stand before a woman who loves you without needing you is to face the question, what am I without her dependence? Who am I if she stays not because she must, but because she chooses? And choice is unbearable to the fragile ego, for it means she can also choose to walk away. Think of the myths. Think of the gods who could not endure mortal women who refused to bow, Hera's wrath, Aphrodite's vengeance. Men have long turned against women, whose love was not servitude. And yet those are the very women who embody individuation, who walk the path Jung described, the merging of conscious and unconscious, the becoming of a whole self. To love without need is to love from fullness, not from lack. It is the mark of the individuated soul, and so she becomes an archetype herself, the woman who stands sovereign, who invites love but does not beg for it. Some women watching this will feel the sting of recognition. You have been punished for loving this way. You have been told you are too independent, that you don't need a man enough. But ask yourself, why should love require you to amputate your strength? Why should devotion mean dependency? Perhaps it is not that you are too much, but that they were too unprepared. Perhaps it is not that your love was cold, but that its warmth did not burn with desperation. The truth is this: she who loves without need awakens the deepest insecurities in those who have yet to meet their shadow. Her presence demands maturity. Her sovereignty demands wholeness. And those unwilling to face themselves will always call her unloving when, in fact, she is the only one who truly knows how to love. He mistook her steadiness for indifference. To him, the absence of desperation felt like distance, as though her soul were a locked chamber he could not enter. But in truth, it was not coldness. It was clarity. She did not confuse attachment with devotion. She did not tether her worth to his approval. She did not make him her son and orbit endlessly around him. And for a man unprepared to face himself, that felt unbearable. For the insecure masculine thrives when a woman collapses, when her center of gravity shifts into his hands. Without that collapse, he must confront his own emptiness. Jung would call this confrontation with the self, when the ego, fragile and afraid, is forced to glimpse the abyss within. Her independence acted as a mirror. It showed him the parts of himself he had hidden, the boy who never felt enough, the man who feared insignificance, the shadow he had buried beneath bravado. And rather than facing it, he blamed her. He called her detached, aloof, unfeeling. But these were projections, defense mechanisms to avoid admitting the truth. It was not her distance that haunted him, but his own. You may have seen this in your own life, when a woman's love is calm, not chaotic, when her affection is steady, not suffocating. A man who has not yet individuated will interpret this as rejection. Why? Because he confuses intensity with intimacy. He equates possession with passion. He cannot understand that true love does not consume, it sustains. And so he mislabels her strength as absence, when it is, in fact, the highest form of presence. In Stoic thought, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Her love embodied this wisdom. She did not grasp at him. She did not demand he fill her voids. She had cultivated her own mind, her own spirit. She had power over her needs. But to him, this sovereignty was unsettling, because if she does not need him to complete her, then what is his role? If she can stand tall on her own, then how will he feel important? This is the wound of the unintegrated man. He does not know how to coexist with wholeness. He only knows how to dominate or to save. And when she needs neither, he feels unnecessary. What he does not see is that her lack of need does not erase his value, it magnifies it. For if she stays, it is by choice, not by compulsion. If she loves, it is from abundance, not from emptiness. This is the rarest gift a man could ever receive, yet many throw it away, blinded by their own ego's panic. And so he withdraws, or he lashes out, or he attempts to break her independence so she might need him once again. But each attempt only proves his weakness. Each attempt only reveals that he has not faced the anima within, that he cannot yet bear the truth that the feminine is not meant to be conquered, but honored. His failure is not in losing her, it is in failing to meet himself through her. Here is where Jung's insight pierces deepest. The woman who loves without need becomes an initiator. She initiates him into his shadow, into the realization that his worth cannot be measured by another's dependence. She forces him, without saying a word, to confront the question, will you collapse into fear, or will you rise into wholeness? For only a man who has embraced his own soul can stand beside a woman who is already whole. Think of how many relationships crumble not from betrayal, but from this silent test. She stands in her power, and he calls it distance. She loves with freedom, and he calls it coldness. She refuses to cling, and he calls it unfaithfulness. But these are not her sins. They are his projections. He is at war not with her, but with the unhealed parts of himself that cannot bear to see her, sovereignty. And you, if you are listening, how many times have you been told you are too much or not enough, when in truth you were simply whole? How many times have you softened your edges, pretended to need what you did not, all to soothe a man's insecurity? And what did it cost you? Every time you diminished yourself to make another feel powerful, you betrayed the very gift you carry, the ability to love without chains. Remember this: a woman's wholeness is not a threat to a man who is whole. It is only unbearable to the one still fragmented. If he cannot handle her love, it is not because her love is wrong. It is because he has not yet handled his own shadow. He has not yet faced the truth that love is not possession, not need, not control. It is freedom. And freedom terrifies those who live imprisoned by their own wounds. He wanted her to need him in the way a drowning man needs air. He wanted to be indispensable, the axis upon which her world spun. But when he realized she would not collapse into him, he mistook that balance for rejection. Her love was not desperate, it was sovereign. And sovereignty is unbearable to the fragile ego. For the ego, love is safest when it can be owned, when it comes wrapped in dependency. But she did not hand herself over as property. She offered herself as presence. That distinction was enough to unravel him. Jung understood this tension well. The anima in a man, his inner feminine, is often neglected, feared, or projected outward. When he refuses to integrate her, he seeks her in women outside himself, demanding they carry the burden of his inner emptiness. He does not want a woman. He wants salvation. But salvation cannot come from another. And when he met a woman who did not need rescuing, the mirror shattered. For how could she save him if she herself refused to be saved? How could she confirm his identity as protector if she needed no protection? What he called her lack was in fact his own. He could not handle her love, because it was clean, uncluttered by desperation, free of the very chains he confused with intimacy. You can feel the weight of this, can't you? The woman who does not beg becomes unbearable to those who demand submission. She exposes the truth that love is a choice, not an obligation. And choice is terrifying, because it means she can leave without shattering. It means her heart belongs to herself first. It means she has the strength to walk away, even if she still cares. For him, this was not romance. It was threat. For her, it was freedom, and freedom was the only way she knew how to love. Men unprepared for this freedom often turn against it. They begin to criticize, to diminish, to call her unfeeling, but their words betray their fear. A woman who does not collapse forces a man to ask himself, "Who am I, if not the one she cannot live without?" And when he cannot answer, he blames her. He tries to convince her that her independence is coldness, that her balance is cruelty. Yet deep down, he knows the truth. It is not she who is lacking, but he who is unready. The Stoics spoke often of this kind of strength. Seneca wrote that the greatest wealth is a poverty of needs. She embodied this truth. Her wealth was not in possessions, not in dependency, but in her ability to stand whole within herself. She did not hunger for a savior. She did not require his validation to know her worth. She loved him, but her love was a gift, not a crutch. And therein lay the paradox. The purer her love became, the more unworthy he felt. For he had built his identity on being necessary, and here was a woman proving that necessity was an illusion. So he recoiled. Some men do more than recoil. They seek to break her sovereignty, to make her dependent again, to drag her down into need so they can breathe easier. But such attempts are doomed, because sovereignty, once tasted, cannot be forgotten. A woman who has discovered her wholeness will never again mistake possession for passion. She may suffer for a time. She may bend under the weight of manipulation. But deep within her, the truth endures. She does not need to need. This truth shifts the power dynamic in ways he cannot tolerate. When she does not depend, he cannot control. When she does not cling, he cannot claim superiority. Her very being forces him into equality, and equality terrifies the unintegrated man. For to stand as equal requires wholeness within, the courage to see her as partner, not possession. And few have that courage. Jung's work reveals why. It requires shadow work. It requires facing the inner fractures, the unloved child, the hidden fear of worthlessness. Only then can a man love without demanding need in return. And here perhaps is the most painful irony. The love he could not handle was the love that could have healed him. For in her freedom was an invitation to meet her as an equal, to shed the illusion of control, to step into wholeness alongside her. But he was not ready, and so he fled or turned cold or sought another who would need him enough to soothe his ego. He chose the illusion over the truth, comfort over growth, and she remained whole, even in loss. Do you see it? The pattern repeats endlessly in relationships across time. A woman who stands rooted in her sovereignty is punished for the very gift she offers. Yet the punishment is not proof of her flaw. It is proof of his unreadiness. To love without need is to embody the highest form of intimacy. And only the man who has faced himself can stand in its fire without burning. The deeper he sank into his discomfort, the more he mistook her sovereignty for abandonment. He told himself she didn't care enough, that she wasn't invested the way he was. But in truth, he had never learned the difference between love and dependence. He had never been shown that the purest devotion arises not from lack, but from abundance. And so, when she offered him abundance, he recoiled as though it were poison. For a man who confuses chains with intimacy, freedom feels like rejection. Jung would have called this the confrontation with the shadow. When the woman does not need him, she forces him to see the hollowness he carries inside. She is not rejecting him. She is revealing him. Every moment she stood calm in her wholeness, he saw reflected back the boy who still longed for a mother's unconditional dependence, the man who feared insignificance unless someone leaned on him for survival. She stirred wounds he had, buried so deeply he mistook them for truth. Rather than thanking her for the mirror, he shattered it. He called her love too distant, too cool, too self-contained. He mistook her healed heart for a frozen one. And yet, what if he had stayed? What if he had withstood the storm of his own insecurity long enough to see what she was really offering? He would have seen a love purified of ego, stripped of control. He would have discovered that she was not cold at all. She was spacious enough to let him breathe, to let him become, to let him fail and rise again without shackles. Her lack of need was not a dismissal. It was the deepest respect. She gave him freedom because she had given it to herself first. But freedom is frightening to those who have built their identity on being indispensable. You, listening now, know this fear well. You have seen men retreat when faced with a woman who refuses to play small. You have seen them interpret your independence as distance, your calm as disinterest, your power as arrogance. But beneath their judgments lies a confession. They do not yet know how to meet a woman who belongs first to herself. They crave the archetype of the dependent maiden, the one who cannot stand alone. But Jung's individuation demands more. It demands that each soul become whole within itself before merging with another. And she, this woman, had done that work. She had walked through her shadows, faced her wounds, and emerged sovereign. He had not. It is no wonder he could not handle her. To love her required him to dismantle the scaffolding of his ego, to face the terror of not being needed, and to discover the deeper truth, that being chosen freely is infinitely more powerful than being clung to. But to reach that truth, he would have had to die to the boy within him, the one who still equated worth with control. Few are brave enough for such a death. The Stoics would have called her freedom virtue. Epictetus taught that no man is truly free until he governs himself. She embodied this. Her emotions were not cages, her devotion not a plea. She could stand beside him without falling into him, and because she needed nothing, everything she gave was pure gift. But for him, raised in a world where possession masquerades as love, this gift was incomprehensible. He wanted the drama of dependency, the reassurance of desperation. He did not know how to breathe in the quiet air of unconditional freedom. So he retreated, or lashed out, or sought another who would collapse into him, confirming the illusion of his indispensability. And she did not chase, because to chase would be to betray the very essence of her love. Her heart was vast, but it was not begging. She had nothing to prove, no emptiness to disguise. She knew the truth. Love that is begged for is not love, it is survival. Love that is chosen without need, that is real. And here is the paradox that burns. The very love that could have liberated him was the one he could not endure. He longed for dependence but was offered freedom. He wanted validation but was given sovereignty. He demanded control but was handed equality. And equality was too much for him. He did not lose her because she was lacking. He lost her because she was whole. You must ask yourself then, how many times have you been punished for your wholeness? How many times have you hidden your strength, softened your sovereignty, pretended to need, just to make another feel powerful? And how? Much of yourself was left behind in the process. Every time you diminish yourself to soothe someone else's insecurity, you step away from the very gift that makes your love pure. The gift of choosing, not clinging, of offering, not depending, of standing whole, not fragmented. The woman who loves without need becomes a test, not just of a man's character, but of his readiness. She does not demand he be perfect. She does not demand he save her. She demands only that he meet her as she is, whole, sovereign, free. If he cannot, he will turn away. If he can, he will discover a love that does not imprison but expands, that does not consume but nourishes, that does not weaken but fortifies. Such a love is rare, and only the brave can stand in its light. There's a reason her presence unsettled him so deeply. She was not just a woman, she was an archetype. She embodied the self in its fullness, the image of a soul that no longer grasps, no longer begs, no longer hides in dependency. In Jungian terms, she was the anima made flesh, but unlike the projections he had placed on other women, she did not bend to play his unconscious script. She did not collapse into his arms like a child into a parent. She stood before him as an equal, and equality is a mirror the unprepared cannot bear. He mistook her balance for distance because his own inner scales were broken. He had built a life on uneven ground, on the fragile assurance that someone weaker would lean on him and call it love. But when, faced with a woman who leaned not out of necessity but out of choice, he trembled. For choice meant risk. Choice meant she could leave at any time and still stand tall. Choice meant his worth was no longer defined by being indispensable. It was defined by who he truly was, and he had never faced that question without flinching. She loved him without need, and in that love, she broke his illusions. He saw that his power was borrowed, propped up by dependency, not rooted in true strength. He saw that she would not sacrifice her sovereignty to soothe his wounds. And he hated her for it, though it was not hate, it was fear. Fear of a truth too heavy for his ego, that she could love him deeply and yet still survive without him. To a man unready for individuation, this is unbearable. He wants love to be necessity, not freedom. He wants a woman to dissolve without him, not expand beside him. He wants to be the center of her gravity, not a companion in her orbit. but she would not surrender her light for his shadow. She would not shrink to make his ego feel tall. She had walked through her own fire, confronted her own darkness, stitched her wounds with patience and solitude. She had learned to stand, and once a woman learns to stand, she will never crawl again. This truth is what he could not handle. Not her love, not her devotion, but her wholeness. You know this story. You may have lived it. You may have felt the sting of being told you are too independent, too detached, too much in your own world. But listen closely. Those accusations are not reflections of your failure. They are confessions of theirs. They confess an unprepared soul who cannot yet meet the archetype of the sovereign feminine. They confess a man who still seeks validation in being needed, rather than strength in being chosen. And you must decide. Will you dim yourself to ease his fear, or will you remain whole, even if it means he cannot follow? The Stoics warned of this long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Her independence was not his pain. His interpretation was. Her sovereignty was not rejection. His fear made it so. And had he seen clearly, he would have realized that she offered him the rarest gift, a love purified of fear, free of control, rooted in choice, a love that invited him to become whole himself. But he was not ready. And so he called her heart cold when it was steady. He called her distance cruelty when it was clarity. He mistook her refusal to beg as a refusal to love. But these were illusions born of shadow. In truth, she loved him more purely than he had ever known. She loved him without need, without conditions, without the suffocating grasp of dependency. And because he could not own her, he could not trust her. Because she did not need him, he doubted she wanted him. He could not comprehend that. The highest form of desire is wanting without needing, choosing without clinging. But she knew. She had learned through pain, through solitude, through her own individuation. She had discovered that love is not meant to replace your soul. It is meant to walk beside it. And so she remained whole, even as he unraveled. He lost her, not because she was lacking, but because she had already found herself. And in the end, he was not ready for the one thing she could never unlearn: that freedom is the only soil in which love can grow. And you, if you hear these words and feel them in your bones, then know this: you are not too much. You are not unloving. You are not distant. You are whole. And those who cannot stand in the presence of wholeness will always call it something else. Do not bend to their projections. Do not shrink to soothe their fear. For the love that is worthy of you is the one that can stand in your freedom without trembling. The love that will not demand your dependence, but honor your sovereignty. The woman who loves without need is not unlovable. She is unforgettable. She is the rare soul who teaches the world that the purest bond is not forged in chains, but in choice. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.